The prevailing wisdom of our day may say that dogfighting is a thing of the past, but the F-15EX is here to hope that wisdom's wrong. This is not a stealthy fighter, and to tell you the truth, I think it would want you to see it coming. But the Eagle II's pair of GE F-110 turbofan engines are so powerful it produces more thrust than an F-15C with a Northrop F-5 strapped on top of it. It has an all-glass cockpit, increased weapons capacity, and the fastest processing mission computer ever affixed to a fighter. And I haven't even gotten to what makes it so scary yet. In a new video released by Boeing, we get a chance to see just how capable this new batch of Eagles really are. Now, these fighters are actually F-15QAs that Boeing built for Qatar, because although the United States took delivery of its last Eagles almost 20 years ago now, Saudi Arabia and Qatar continued buying these aircraft, and not only that, they continued investing into research and development to make it even better, to the tune of about $5 billion. And one of the biggest changes that this investment funded was fly-by-wire controls. Let's talk about why the F-15EX is capable of performing maneuvers no Eagle before it could. In fact, it's capable of performing maneuvers you'd usually need thrust vector control to pull off. And it all comes down to having a computer in the loop. Back in 2013, the F-15SA, which is the version of the Eagle operated by Saudi Arabia, emerged as the first ever F-15 to have fly-by-wire control. All Eagles before this were controlled via a traditional hydromechanical control system that's run through a control augmentation system to enhance the aircraft's responsiveness, and that was plenty good enough to rack up more than 100 air-to-air kills. But the fly-by-wire control computer introduced in the F-15SA, further improved in the F-15QA, and seeing further refinement in the F-15EX, controls the aircraft in a way no pilot could with the traditional system. You see, fly-by-wire controls are just better at interpreting the movement of the aircraft in relation to its control surfaces, allowing it to make countless instantaneous adjustments to control surfaces to produce the best possible result depending on whatever maneuver you're trying to execute. In other words, while a pilot may not be able to make tiny, minute changes to the angle of control surfaces to make their turns even more extreme, a computer can. And does. But far more than just doing a better job of controlling the aircraft, this fly-by-wire system also knows the precise limits of the airframe and whatever maneuver you're trying to conduct. And as a result, it will allow you to fly right up to the hairy edge of the jet's capability every time in a consistent way, which is something no pilot in their right mind would ever have tried without a computer there to stop you from flying the aircraft apart. In fact, this system is so capable that it, along with improvements made to the F-15's airframe and fuselage, allowed the computer to limit maneuvers to 9 Gs under normal circumstances and 12 Gs in emergencies. Now, I don't know how else to say this. 12 Gs is absolutely insane. This video shows what happens to a pilot when they're subjected to 9 Gs, and yeah, he passes out, and that's not even embarrassing. But putting a computer in the loop doesn't just allow pilots to push the aircraft to its limits more consistently and reliably. It also allows pilots to transition from one aerobatic maneuver to another while maintaining the most possible airspeed. Now, in air combat, airspeed is life. It's the energy you expend when you need to shake an inbound missile or reposition your aircraft to get a firing solution on your opponent. And by streamlining this transition, it allows the F-15EX to perform aerobatic maneuvers that would traditionally require thrust vector control. Now, thrust vector control is a unique form of engine nozzle that allows the pilot to orient the outflow of the engine's thrust somewhat independent of the airframe. Now, this is very common in Soviet and then Russian fighter designs, like the Su-35 and the Su-57. The only aircraft in the American arsenal with thrust vector control is the F-22 Raptor. The F-15EX does not have it. But the F-15EX is capable of performing maneuvers you'd usually need an F-22 Raptor to pull off. And that's not just me talking. My buddy Steve Trimble with Aviation Week recently interviewed Boeing test pilot Stephen Mongoose Dodder. Now, Mongoose was explaining the routine that he does in the F-15QA and EX at air shows, and he specifically explained that he performs maneuvers that are usually only performed by the Su-35 or the F-22 Raptor at these sorts of demonstrations. In fact, he specifically included some maneuvers from the F-22 Raptor demo team into his F-15EX routine to demonstrate just how capable this aircraft really is. So now that you understand that, this footage of Mongoose and his pals pushing F-15QAs to their limits really gives you a sense of just how different the F-15EX is as compared to the F-15Cs and Ds that it's replacing. But by now you may be wondering, what good is an aerobatic Eagle in this era of stealthy and a bit more sluggish fighters? And the answer really comes down to operating cost and advertising your military presence. You see, aircraft like the F-35 and the F-22 cost significantly more to operate per hour than fourth-generation aircraft like the F-15 and F-16. In fact, the US Air Force couldn't afford to operate a fighter fleet the size that it does if all of them were stealth fighters. Then the truth is, there are times when you want the enemy to know that you're there because your presence alone is sending a deterrent message. Now, in the F-22 and F-35, we pull this off by installing radar reflectors called Lunenburg lenses that produce a massive radar return and make sure everyone knows that there's a stealth fighter in the neighborhood. But the F-15EX's massive standing vertical tails and their hard 90-degree angles produce a huge radar return that makes sure everyone knows just where you are when you want them to know that you're there. And when you don't want them to know that you're there, the F-15EX has one of the most advanced electronic warfare suites ever installed in a fighter. The F-15EX would not lead the way in a high-end conflict with a nation like China, but it could play an important role in freedom of navigation flights and deterrent operations over the Pacific and specifically the South China Sea. And if such a fight were to break out, the F-15EX's ability to carry 12 air-to-air missiles, as well as enough power to carry massive air-launched hypersonic missiles once they enter service, make the F-15EX an extremely potent missile truck to support F-35 and forthcoming NGAD operations. In other words, stealth aircraft with a finite supply of missiles stored internally can rely on long-range missiles launched by F-15EXs a few miles behind them. So the F-15EX may look like a 50-year-old fighter, but it is very much a 21st century airborne boogeyman. And there are very few fighters on the planet I'd pick heading into the merge against one.